Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. It looks like the China bug is back in Germany. The pathogen is spreading among the population once again. The second wave that people have been talking about all summer, even though it wasn't really there then, is here in October now. In today's video, I want to explain to you why I think that what we are seeing at the moment is real. It is a real signature of that virus spreading among the German population, and what is different between now and the summer when our media was going crazy over nothing and when they hyped up a problem that at that time wasn't really there. I want to thank all my supporters and my subscribers. If you like this kind of video, these presentations, like, share and subscribe and leave a comment down below. You can support my work directly via PayPal or via Patreon or Subscribestar. So even though it might be a little bit more technical today, I nevertheless want to explain to you why I think, or explain my reasoning, why I think that what we're seeing right now is an actual signature of the China bug. If you remember, in summer I told you that we have a lot of false positives, and when you look at this curve here, at this plot that shows you the daily new cases from Germany, and by cases of course we mean positive PCR test results. You see that there is this first hump in March and April and it went away. And then in summer you see some localized spikes that were actually some very local events in German cities, and then it goes down again and it rises a little bit in August and a little bit in September, and now in October it really takes off. Now, I was talking a lot about false positives during the summer when our media was going crazy and they wanted tighter restrictions and they really tried to scare the people, even though obviously nothing was going on. And my line of argumentation was always that there is a small but non-zero probability to have a false positive test result. That means the PCR test shows a positive result, but in fact the RNA or the pathogen is not really in the patient. There are many reasons for that, and this probability is not constant. It can vary over time and depending on the place and depending on how the test is conducted. There are so many parameters, but it is estimated to be between 0.5 and 2%. The only way I really could estimate that was if you look at really healthy populations where you don't see any symptoms or any real cases that have to be hospitalized with serious conditions and heavy symptoms. You will still, when you do thousands of tests on this ensemble, you will get some positive results. And as you see from this data from Germany, but also from some other countries, some very careful, very rich countries, some Arab nations come to mind, where you hardly have any positive test results, but hundreds of thousands of tests were conducted. This is an estimate that gives you an upper estimate for the rate of false positive results, and that is what I used. So that is the 0.5 to 1.5 or 2%. And here you can see, yes, in summer, as I described before, the cases were going up again. But when you look at the number of tests that were performed each week, you see that that number was going up too. And the ratio of positive tests from all the tests was, it wasn't really going up that much. It went from almost 0.5% up to 1%. And I think, that is still not really a big increase, so that could still be noise. Now, however, in October, it is really, in my opinion at least, a different scenario. And I want to be very clear about what I am saying here. I am operating here under the assumption that in early October, the number of tests that were conducted each day or each week stays almost the same as in September, and that is around 1 million or 1.2 million tests a calendar week, which would translate into 170,000 tests on average each day. And if you go up then from 2,000 cases a day up to 7,000 cases a day, that would mean that the ratio of positive results went up from 1% or 1.5% up to 4%. And that is the calculation now that I did for this one day where we have this 7,000 cases a day result. And I'm operating once again under the assumption that we still have 170,000 tests a day, for which I do not have any evidence at the moment. It's an assumption, okay? But I really can't imagine that we went up from 1 million tests a week to all of a sudden 4 million tests a week, because according to my knowledge, that would exceed the testing capacity of Germany right now by far. So once again, my assumption is that the number of overall tests stays more or less unaltered with respect to September, and we went from 2,000 to 7,000 cases a day on average. This would yield a positive rate or a positive ratio of 4% of the tests, and that, in my opinion, can no longer be explained by false positives. This is a real signature for comparison in this first wave that was definitely real. In March and April, it went up to 9%. On one day, I had seen 13% for a single day. That was the top ratio I saw, but for the average per week, it was no higher than 9%. So I think 4% is pretty real. And we also see other indicators. We see that while the ratio of people in critical condition still stays almost the same, 1%, the overall number has been going up. And that is a real thing. So we have 60,000 cases currently in Germany, and 600 of them are in critical condition, where I would assume that they are in hospital care. So when people are admitted to a hospital with clear symptoms such as pneumonia, shortness of breath, if they need to be hooked up to a ventilator, to be ventilated with pressure, because otherwise their lungs can no longer get enough oxygen into their bloodstream, that is a clear indication that there is something going on. I am in constant contact with doctors from German hospitals, and they corroborate that. They say, yes, I mean, the numbers are still low, but it's definitely getting more. Our beds are not filling up really, but we get more cases than we had in the summer, and the symptoms are very clear. These are people that need care, who would otherwise die, and it is starting again right now. So I really, really hope that our politicians and our media does not overreact once again, but that we can rationally and calmly take measures and get through the cold season. I'm really becoming sick and tired of being told constantly that this is a new thing and it changes everything and our entire way of life and our economy, everything has to change now. This is not a big deal. We had these things before. There are plenty of viruses and infections that are similar, and we always dealt with them, and it was never top news. It was never even in the media. And life always went on as it did before. Just in this year, with this new thing, everything is supposed to be differently. And I reject this notion completely, as I did from the very beginning in February or March when I made my first videos about that. I was in favor of temporary measures to flatten the curve, or however you want to call that, and I still stand by that. But I said from the very beginning that I will not accept any permanent or long-term, mid-term measures that change our way of life. And I was already warning you, and I was right, of course, that the globalists and the politicians, they will try to use that, make people afraid, to engage in fear-mongering, and then to transform our societies according to their designs. That needs to be fought against, that needs to be challenged and clearly rejected. Nevertheless, this virus, this disease is very real, I think. It is serious, just like influenza is also a serious disease, a serious threat to some people, and we need to be careful about that, of course. That is my position on this issue, and it has been so all along. I have not changed my position a single day in this year. It is just that the situation was very different between March and June and now in October. The situation has changed. My opinion has not changed. My assessment of this overall situation is still the same. It is just that it is starting again now. And one more comment. I have shown you in my last video on the topic that the overall excess mortality was not really higher, or the mortality of 2020 so far has not been higher in Germany than in previous years. It was actually a little lower than in the years with a more severe influenza season. But who knows if this second wave is the same? I mean, the first wave started in March, and the cold season was on its way out, and now it's October and it is just getting cold, and I think the season has a lot to do with that. The flu season is normally earlier, so now I think it starts at the time when normally the flu season would start, and maybe we are hit harder now than in the spring. Who knows? I have no idea. Also, I showed you with the Euromomo database that in other European countries, the mortality was much higher than in previous years. So Germany, Switzerland, Austria, they had no increased mortality. However, the UK, Spain, Italy, the Netherlands, Belgium, they had a very much increased mortality already in the spring with respect to previous years. So I have no idea if Germany will still be that lucky, so to speak, or get through this second wave as well as we got through the first wave. I have no idea. I really don't know what these parameters are, if it has something to do with the strain of the virus that was active in different countries, or if it's the weather or the way people behave, the way people live. The culture plays a role maybe also, or other genetic or environmental parameters. I really don't know. I just want to conclude by saying once again that we should all firmly reject all these notions that our way of life needs to fundamentally change now because of this little inconvenience, while at the same time, nevertheless, I am fairly convinced that this is of course a real threat to certain people, and we should be careful and we should accept some measures and also take some measures out of our own free will and our own decency towards our fellow citizens in order to protect them and to limit the spread of this pathogen as best as we can. Just as a side note, before I really stop here, as you all know, I've been living in Japan for a long time now, and I really enjoy the fact that, or I support the fact, I feel really good about that in winter, when there is a flu season, Japanese people are very mindful, they put on their masks, and they do that for a long time already. For many decades already they do that, and also personal space is an issue, that you don't get into other people's faces while there is a virus going around. I think this is just common courtesy. I think it is a good thing when I'm in the subway in Japan I feel really good about that. And in summer, normally, not this year of course, but normally in the summer, nobody wears a mask in Japan unless, and I said that, unless some woman or some girl is too lazy or too cheap to put makeup on. But other than that, it is only in the flu season when you see the face masks, and then I think it's just a nice gesture and it helps maybe a little bit. But we should not blow this out of proportion and make it into something that it shouldn't be. It is a little gesture and maybe it helps a little bit, but I think it is much more important that people who are vulnerable, like people with pre-existing conditions and the elderly, for example, that they are protected and maybe temporarily isolated, but that should be a question of personal choice. I don't think that the state should get involved too much here. Let me know what you think about that. I can imagine that a lot of you guys disagree with me, and that is fine, I guess. Servus, Kameraden.